Hey, welcome back to Drowning in Yarn. I'm Caleb. So today, what's on my mind is Brooklyn Tweed. If you've been following along with me, you've probably guessed that they're my favorite yarn company and they make some of my favorite yarns. This week, they are coming out with a new pattern collection of genderless patterns that are made to fit every body without sacrificing fit and finish and polish. I've seen these patterns and they're absolutely gorgeous. And I was so honored that they reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to join the conversation around degendering fashion. So I obviously said yes, and I'm kind of collaborating with Brooklyn Tweed in an official capacity by writing a blog post that you're going to be able to see on Brooklyn Tweed's blog. I'm just so excited about this, and I wanted to let you know so that you can look out for their pattern collection and you can be on the lookout for my blog post, which if you've signed up for their newsletter, you'll see in your email. And if not, I'll be sure and update you on my community posts here on YouTube and let you know when that comes out. I love Brooklyn Tweed. I have since I started knitting. I was so lucky to go to sort of a Brooklyn Tweed weekend at my local yarn store early on after I learned to knit. And I learned so much about their philosophy as a company, and it just made me fall in love with the materials with wool from an early point in my knitting kind of life. So I feel like I learned so much from Brooklyn Tweed and they kind of shaped me into like the knitter that I am today. And it doesn't hurt that their yarns are so amazing. I've always loved Shelter. I've knit a few sweaters in Shelter. It's such a rustic, woolly, very lofty, light but warm yarn that creates just this beautiful fabric that's so soft and lovely to wear. And I was so excited whenever Brooklyn Tweed came out with a new yarn called Tones. I just have not been able to knit with anything but Tones for a little while. I just finished my second sweater with Tones, which is in the process of blocking right now. I took some of the scraps from a Shelter project that I had and this second Tones sweater that I knit, and I created a sparkwood hat mixing these two yarns, these two of my favorite yarns now, so that I could see how they played together. Brooklyn Tweed, when they were marketing Tones, has said that Tones is a gauge match for Shelter, which I found to be true because the sweaters that I knit in Tones, they're two variations of the same pattern that was designed for Shelter, and it worked perfectly. So then I knit this hat that is designed for Tones and use Shelter for the brim of the hat and then Tones for the main color of the hat, the cable work in the hat, and found that they worked perfectly together. And it's really interesting because Shelter is, I believe, a 2-ply yarn. It's very light and lofty, and it blooms beautifully whenever you block it. And Tones is a 3-ply yarn, which just means that, that third ply makes the yarn a little bit rounder. It sort of wraps those two plies that Shelter would have and creates this like sturdier yarn, this rounder, sturdier yarn that's perfect for cable work. You can see that in my sparkwood hat. These cables just really pop. And the yarn is sturdier, so it feels stronger. It feels not more substantial. I don't know a better word than sturdier when you're knitting with it. And I've heard people say that Shelter, when you pull on it, can break if you're knitting tightly or whatever. I haven't had a problem with that myself, but I know that that's a criticism I've heard. And Tones doesn't feel as, breakable, I guess, as Shelter might. It just feels like more substantial when you're knitting with it, but the resulting fabric is just as light and lofty and beautiful as Shelter, and it's every bit as soft as Shelter. So I think I found my new favorite yarn. My only criticism of Tones, if I have one, is the palette. The colors are absolutely gorgeous. They're all the yarns are dyed either dark gray or light gray, and then they're together over dyed in one color. So you end up with, say, in Granito, which is green that I used in my sweater, with a darker version of that color and a lighter version of that color with the same dye lot. And I love these colors, but there aren't very many earth tones, and that's what I like to work with. So mixing Shelter and mixing Tones in the same project, for me, is perfect. I used this color of shelter called Meteorite for the brim of this hat, and this brown is absolutely beautiful and is right in my wheelhouse, and it mixed gorgeously with this green Granita tones yarn. So I'm just super happy with how mixing these two yarns worked out. So that's really all I have to share with you. I hope you've enjoyed this sort of stream of consciousness update. And if you have and you want to see more of these in the future, as I have things to share that I don't necessarily want to make a full video about, then hit the little like button. Let me know in the comments what kind of videos you do want to see from me, and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already and you want to see more knitting and yarn related videos in the future. But until next time, I hope you enjoy your knitting, and I'll talk to you later.